just want like 5 minutes to yourself. He started doing a version of sleep training that's supposed to be more gentle. He was waking up almost every single hour. Hey, welcome to today's video. If this is your first time here, I'm Amber. I make kind of crunchy motherhood and lifestyle videos. If you like that sort of thing, please hit that subscribe button down below. I'd love to see you around here more often. Today, we are talking about sleep regressions because they are brutal, or at least they can be. My son is currently 15 months old, and within the first few years of a child's life, there are quite a few sleep regressions that they can potentially go through, and I feel like they come right when you feel like you're starting to get the hang of things, you're starting to get into a bit of a routine, and then it's like bam. I'm gonna share 2 of our most difficult sleep regression stories, what happened, what we did, what worked, what didn't work, and then I have a few overall takeaways at the end. So if you are going through it right now, you can maybe get a few ideas from this, or if you just need to know that you are not the only one. I understand that when I was going through these really tough regressions, I just wanted someone to brainstorm with me, to give me a little bit of sympathy, and really just to listen. So if you do need that, drop a comment down below. I am here for you. Sleep regressions happen when babies are progressing developmentally. So it could be physical, mental, or emotional, but something is happening and it messes with their sleep. So they might wake up more often, they might struggle with naps, and they might have a harder time falling asleep. The first one we're going to talk about is the 4-month sleep regression, which is usually the first sleep regression that babies go through, and it's caused by their sleep patterns changing from like newborn sleep cycles to more adult-like sleep cycles, where basically they start going through phases of light sleep to REM sleep. And when they go into that light sleep, they might just wake up entirely, look around, and if they don't like what they see, then they're probably going to get upset. And if I sound nasally, it's because I'm getting over a cold. I'm sorry. Up until this point, my son would usually only wake up every like 2 to 3 hours at night to feed. Other than that, for the most part, when he was out, he was out. But we went through a little bit of a pre-regression at about 3.5 months where he started waking up just a little bit more frequently at night. Other than that, everything was normal. But at the time, I thought, oh, maybe this is the sleep regression because it doesn't have to happen like at 4 months exactly. He had 2 nights of really good sleep after that, and then came the real regression. He would be out cold, and right when we would lay him down into his bassinet, he would immediately wake up crying or screaming, and then it would take us a while to get him to go back to sleep. He also started struggling with naps, and then during the night when we finally would get him down, he was waking up almost every single hour. So it was very, very rough. It lasted 5 days, and I felt like death by the end of this. Sometimes the only way that we were able to all 3 get some sleep was by co-sleeping, which we're not huge fans of co-sleeping. I talk all about why we're not in this video right here about the mistakes that I made in the newborn phase. I'll link it in the description box as well if you want to check that out. We don't really love it, and Kai actually seems to prefer his own space as well. So we would try to get him to sleep until we were absolutely just spent, and then we would just pull him in the bed with us. He was also really struggling with naps during this phase, and Alex was going back to work at this point. Thank goodness he only had to go in twice a week, but during those days he was gone, a lot of the time I could not get Kai to nap, so I would just be rocking him or bouncing him on the little exercise ball, and he would just be crying, and it was just so hard because you just want like 5 minutes to yourself. Anyway, here's what we did. The first thing we did was implement a sleep time routine. I would have done this sooner, but honestly, it just wasn't necessary because he would always just fall asleep. There was no effort in putting him to sleep, but it was very clear that at this point, he needed some time to start to wind down. I wouldn't say that this really helped him stay asleep. It did seem like it started to help him fall asleep faster, and it's definitely helped in the long term because now when we do our little routine, right when we're done, he just puts his head on our shoulder and he goes right to sleep for the most part. We got blackout curtains, found out that there's apparently different grades of blackout curtains, like there's total blackout and then there's some that I guess don't do as much. And then on top of that, you have to make sure that you get the right length because if it is not close to the ceiling and then the floor, it's going to let a good amount of light in as well. And ours Ours are not ceiling to floor, but they're close enough that the room is pretty dark. This didn't immediately produce any results, but I do think that in the long run, this has helped him nap better because it's just a better sleeping environment. When I'm putting him down for his naps or at night, I'm getting tired and I'm falling asleep because the room is nice and cool, it's nice and dark. So I do think that it could still be a good thing to do, even though it might not help immediately. We tried using a warming pad in his bassinet, and hold on before you come at me. We did not leave it in there. You should never put your baby on top of a plugged in warming pad or even one that's not plugged in. What we would do is we would put it in his bassinet on low. Before we would put him down, we would turn it off, unplug it, and take it out of the bassinet, and then we would put him down. And it was just supposed to be ever so slightly warm so that it wasn't as much of a shock to go from your warm body into their bassinet. I think he went down okay a couple of times, and so we were like, oh yeah, okay, maybe it's working. And then after that, it almost never made any sort of a difference, so we just stopped doing that. The next thing was that I stopped nursing him to sleep for his naps. I would still generally nurse him to sleep for bedtime, and I would still nurse him before his naps because that can help make sure that they don't wake up hungry. I would just make sure that he didn't fall asleep as I was nursing him before that nap time. This actually made it easier for Alex to put him down because he didn't always expect a feed right before going to sleep. The next thing that we did is we tried the eat, play, sleep cycle. I actually had tried this sooner, but he just was not ready for it. Like, he still needed to nurse on demand. But at this point, we gave it a try to make sure that he was getting full feedings as opposed to like little snacking feeds. Although I would still, like I said, nurse him before he would go to sleep. This did not really stick, honestly, because those 2 feedings per wake window were just not enough for him. I started only breastfeeding him at night every 3 hours. So if he woke up before 3 hours, we would just try to put him back to sleep to make sure that he was not eating so much at night that he wasn't hungry during the day. This started because there was one night where I fed him so many times trying to get him to go to sleep that the next day he did not want to nurse until like 10 or 11. So that was obviously not good. And then in the last 2 days of this sleep regression, we started doing a version of sleep training that's supposed to be more gentle. It's called the pick up, put down method, where you get them drowsy and then you put them down, and the second that they start crying, you pick them back up, you soothe them, comfort them, get them drowsy again, put them down, and you just repeat that cycle until they finally just go to sleep. But it's supposed to be more gentle because you're not just like leaving them in their crib to cry. He actually, during this regression, caught onto this very, very fast. It never took more than an hour during this regression to get him to go to sleep. In 2 days, it was over and he was back to sleeping pretty good. The next regression I'm gonna talk about is the 11-12 month sleep regression. We obviously had quite a few other sleep regressions in between, but none of them were quite as intense as that 4-month one and then this 11-month one. During this regression, he went from napping very, very well twice a day to struggling with one or both naps, and there were lots of times that we had to just go ahead and skip a nap. And he went from waking up once a night or not at all in the night to waking up 2 to 3 times every single night. 2 to 3 times might not sound so bad, especially if you're in the newborn phase, but when you start to experience a taste of good sleep again, 2 to 3 times a night is really, really tough. This one actually felt worse than the 4-month regression because the 4-month regression only lasted 5 days. It was intense, but it was short. This regression lasted for about a month and a half. Initially, we were not sure what was causing this one because we had just moved from a 1-bedroom apartment in Arizona to Colorado, and so he finally had his own room. He definitely has a very good sleep environment, and we moved from a downtown area to a more suburban area, so it's definitely much quieter here, but he had just learned to pull himself up to standing. He started cruising on furniture. He was learning to point, and then he popped like 3 teeth or something like that, all in the span of 3 weeks. I was having a really hard time putting Kai down, so I felt really bad for Alex because he would have to do a lot of the nap times, bedtimes, and night wakings, because if I put Kai down and he woke up and saw me, he would immediately freak out. But he didn't really have that reaction for Alex. If he didn't see me, he would just go right back to sleep. Every single week that went by, I kept thinking, well, this has to be it. This has to be it. Because in the past, most of the regressions that we've gone through have only lasted a week, give or take. I would talk to my sister and she was saying maybe he's ready to go down to 1 nap. So I thought, okay, let's just try that. I went ahead and gave it a shot while Alex was actually out of town on a work trip for a couple of days. The first day we tried it, he slept for 2.5 hours, which felt great because he had been struggling with naps for weeks, and sometimes he would be fine for his first nap, but I knew for a fact every single day that he was going to have a really, really tough time with the second nap. So I was thinking, okay, yeah, maybe he is ready. But then that night, he had what's called a split night. It's basically where he woke up an hour and a half after I put him down, and I could not get him to go back to sleep for 2 hours. The next day we tried it again. He took a short nap, and then I ended up needing to hold him for the rest of the nap so that he could get a decent nap in, because he would not let me put him back down, and he also had a really bad night that night. And then I read that when you're transitioning to 1 nap, you might need to teeter-totter back and forth between 2 naps and 1 until they get used to it. So I went ahead and gave that a shot, and after a week, we just found that every single time just about that he only took 1 nap, first of all, he would not sleep long enough a lot of the time, and then he would have a really rough night almost every single time. So at that point, I just threw in the towel and was like, no, he's not ready for it. If you are thinking about transitioning to 1 nap though, I do feel like that was or would be a nice way to do it, because it just made it a little bit less stressful, kind of feeling like, okay, we can play it by ear and not feel like you have to take 1 nap no matter what, even if it's not working. And for the record, he is still doing really good on 2 naps, so it was definitely some kind of a regression. We really only did 2 things during this regression. We tried a version of the controlled cry it out method. The classic one is like 5, 10, 15 minutes. So I'm gonna explain. What we would do is we would put him down. If he started crying, we would wait 2 minutes instead of 5 minutes. And then we would go back in there, pick him up, comfort him, soothe him, put him back down. If he started crying, we would wait 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes, go back in there, comfort him, put him back down. And then if he woke up again and started crying, we would wait 10 minutes. And then from then on out, we would wait 10-minute increments, because to me, 15 minutes just seems like a long time to just let them cry. We actually had done this version of the controlled cry it out method for past sleep regressions, and it had worked really well. But this time around, when we would leave him to cry for even just a couple minutes, he would just get hysterical. In the past, it actually seemed like letting him cry for a little bit would kind of start to like wear him down and make him more tired, but that was not the case this time. He would get kind of crazy, and it was a lot harder to get him to settle back down. The other thing we did is we finally started flipping him over onto his stomach. At this point, he was very close to being 1 year old, which is when you're officially like allowed to start doing that. I know some people do it before. I was just like a stickler and was like, no, we cannot do that. So if he would roll onto his stomach himself, I would leave him, but I always would put him down on his back, and so would Alex. But at this point, we started rolling him over, and that really seemed to make a big difference. It also helped for me, because if I flipped him over really quick, then he didn't have as much of a chance to look at me. Actually, there is one more thing we did. If he did wake up when we would set him down on his stomach, then I would start rubbing his back to try to get him to fall asleep in his crib at that point, instead of immediately picking him back up. And a lot of the time that would work. I don't really know if the stomach sleeping made that big of a difference, or if the regression just ended and he just started sleeping better. You might find that every sleep regression is a little bit different. I certainly have, so here's just a few overall takeaways for dealing with any of them. The first is to remember that there are so many ways to deal with the regression, so don't worry about what anyone else is saying that you should or shouldn't do. You just have to choose a method that aligns with you and your unit and just give it a try. The second thing is to keep in mind that just because one method works for one regression does not mean it's going to work for another. And the best example I have of that is the pick up, put down method, because that worked great during the 4-month regression. And then when the 6-month regression came along, we tried that and he would cry for hours. So that was why we switched to doing our version of the controlled cry it out method, because he would only cry for about an hour if we did the controlled cry it out method, but it was hours for the pick up, put down method. So even though that's supposed to be more gentle, he was all in all crying way, way longer. And so every single regression that we've gone through, I treat it as a completely new situation, and I don't really go into it thinking like, oh, well, because this worked last time, it's gonna work this time. You want to be consistent, and you want to give your baby or toddler a chance to adjust to any changes that you make to their schedule. But at the same time, if something is really, really not working, don't be afraid to just throw in the towel and try something else. All the articles you read are going to tell you that consistency is key, and I do think to some extent that's true, but there's no reason to suffer in the name of being consistent. As much as possible, try to focus on self-care during these times, even if it's just taking 5 minutes to do something that feels recharging or refreshing for you. There will be days where there is no time, but if you do have a moment, please take it. It really, really helps when you're going through these moments where your cup is just empty and you are running on nothing. The last thing is to work on your mindset. Even though you know that your baby has no ulterior motive and you know that they want to sleep and you want to sleep, but it can start to feel kind of personal. Mantras can be really, really helpful during this time. I would tell myself 2 things. 1, that my baby is not doing this to me. I would tell myself he's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. And 2 is kind of a cliche, but that this is just a phase and that it's going to pass. And I would remind myself that there is probably going to be a day where I will miss the days when he would cry out for me and reach out for me with his little hands and just want me to pick him up and hold him so he could fall asleep. Your mindset can make a really big difference. I will put a video right here about ways that you can practice mindfulness as a busy mom for a more positive mindset. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!